I finally did it. I beat my first Castlevania game via the Castlevania Advance Collection, Aria of Sorrow. My prior Castlevania experience, practically none. I played less than an hour of Symphony of the Night back when it was released on Xbox Live Arcade in March of 2007. It seemed cool enough, but old games back then for me weren't really my thing. Otherwise, I logged about 4 hours of Lords of Shadow on Steam. But when I say Castlevania, at least for me, I'm referring to 2D games that are Metroidvania style. So I guess I beat my first Metroidvania, is what I'm getting at. Aria of Sorrow is a fantastic game. I would say it's up there with one of the best I've ever played, to be honest. So why play a 2D Castlevania game now, you ask? Well, funny enough, it was actually the Netflix Castlevania series and not the Advance Collection that got me wanting to play a 2D Metroidvania game. I was late to the party on the Netflix series and I guess Castlevania in general, as you can see by this video. I fell in love with the series, and right as the credits were rolling, I knew that I had to play and experience a Castlevania game for myself. I looked up a bunch of threads and videos on which game was a good place to start for a new Castlevania/Metroidvania fan, and coincidentally, I had just dug up my Game Boy Micro, and that was a match made in heaven because I have an old emulator card on there that had basically every Game Boy Advance game on it already. And then a week or so later, the Castlevania Advance Collection was announced or released, or both at the same time, something like that. So even though I was about 3 or 4 hours into the game on my Micro, I figured playing it on Switch would be a better experience. So that's what I did, and it was worth it. Nearly 11 hours later, with a map at 99.4%, and yes, I tried to get 100%, but close enough. I saw the good ending. Well, sort of. I beat the game at first getting the bad ending and realized that beating Graham Jones, which is a terrible final boss name, by the way, but after beating Graham, I realized that could not be the final boss of the game. So I looked up a guide, basically for just the second time. I really tried to play this game without looking up any walkthroughs, but when I encountered the death boss, I just could not beat it no matter what. And I wound up looking up a guide that basically said I was probably about 10 to 12 levels under-leveled for this fight, so that helped. And I didn't look at the guide again until after I beat Graham to see what the hell I had to do to make it to the true ending. And of course, if you've played Aria of Sorrow, you know that you have to equip 3 specific souls when you fight Graham to unlock the Chaos Realm, I believe. And yes, the game does give you hints via item descriptions that let you know that you actually have to use specific souls. I just completely whiffed on that. But anyways, I did manage to make it to the Chaos Realm and defeat Chaos. And afterwards, I did go back to try to get 100% of the castle, just because I thought that'd be fun. Got to 99.4% using a image on screen of the map, and I don't know where the last 0.6% was, but that doesn't even play into unlocking anything, 100%ing the map, so it is what it is. Close enough, right? Now, I mentioned that I got the good ending, but not the best ending, because I believe getting the best ending requires you to collect every single soul in the game, and I'll get to souls in a little bit. First, let's go over why I found Aria of Sorrow so satisfying to play. First, Soma Cruz controls like butter. From jumping to attacking to using monster souls and sliding, he just felt great to play. It especially helps that there is so much customization available for you, the player, to play Soma the way you want to. Do you want to use a weapon that attacks in an arc or horizontally? Hell, if you want to play with a gun, there's a freaking gun in the game. My favorite weapons wound up being the whip sword, which unfortunately got pretty much outclassed damage-wise very shortly. Luckily, there are some other swords that have very similar attack patterns, mostly the elemental swords and the Sword of Darkness. And yeah, I preferred swords that shot out horizontally as opposed to going out in an arc. Although once I unlocked, I think it's called Claim Solace, yeah, that was the weapon that I used from then on out, because it's a huge freaking sword that does the best damage. But there are so many more options for combat with the unlockable monster souls. My favorites include Disc Armor, which shoots out this huge gear like a yo-yo. And this was one of the souls that actually helped me to finally defeat the death boss after also gaining about 10 levels. But this soul is awesome. I used it for the majority of the game after I unlocked it. I also loved using Bone Pillar, which radiates a consistent flame out of Soma Cruz's hand. Flame Demon was also very useful as it shoots out 3 horizontal flames that do very good damage. And Giant Bat really changes up the gameplay and exploration to a point that it definitely needs a shout out because it makes everything so much better getting around Dracula's castle. There were plenty more that were fun, and it was always a really exciting moment when you unlocked a new one because some of them just straight up gave you better stats. The Triton Soul was one of the best ones that I found because it increased Soma's strength by a whopping 16. I love the progression of unlocking abilities as well, which I know is a big part of Metroidvania games. In the early hours of the game, getting around Dracula's castle, especially without a double jump, was pretty annoying to say the least. Mostly because there were so many items or passageways that you just couldn't reach until you unlocked that ability. There were so many times that I had to make mental notes of, okay, I have to come back here because there's an item or there's a pathway that I don't have access to right now. Yet by the end of the game, I couldn't imagine getting around Dracula's castle without Giant Bat or Soma's crazy high jump ability. Those all made simply traversing Dracula's castle extremely rewarding to do. And speaking of the castle, Dracula's castle was designed so well. Yeah, maybe there was a few points in the game where there's a little bit too long of a distance between a save point or a warp room, but it never really hindered my experience of the game. And boy, was it exciting to hit a wall or notice a wall that something was going on, to hit it with your weapon and for it to unlock a hidden room. That was so much fun to do. And as I mentioned earlier, I tried my best not to use a walkthrough or guide because it ruins the exploration and just the whole point of the game, in my opinion. Had I used one, maybe I would have had an easier time getting 100% to the castle, but as I mentioned before, it doesn't really matter too much. Now, another aspect of getting 100%, the souls, we got to talk about. That would really bring me to my only negative criticism of Aria of Sorrow. The soul system, I both loved and hated. Hated really only because some of these souls are extremely hard to get them to drop. To make matters worse, I definitely had at least 2 or 3 encounters where I would kill a brand new monster that I encountered. They dropped their soul. I'd get it. First try, right? That's awesome. And then on my way to the next save point, I died. And yes, I do know that on the Advance Collection, there's a way to rewind time, but I was at points in the game where I was out of potions and I just couldn't do it. So I lost those souls that I unlocked. And unfortunately, every time I've battled those monsters since, I didn't get the soul to drop. So I basically lost out. And that's even with doing some grinding to try to get them to drop. And from what I've read on forums, even equipping items that increase your item drop rate or increasing the luck stat barely moves the dial on getting monster souls to actually drop. And this is a game that I spent about 11 hours on, and I really didn't want to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 hours grinding monsters just to get that 100% soul drop. Maybe that's something I tackle in a New Game Plus with a potential hard mode, but I'm not usually one for replaying a game right after I beat it. I have a lot of games that I want to get through and play, so a replay of Aria of Sorrow probably won't happen for quite some time. I will say I did give Boss Rush mode a run through, and I've tried Julius Belmont's story a little bit, which is very cool that they're unlockables. But for Belmont, removing all the equipable items and unlockable weapons and armor and monster souls sort of takes the fun out of the game. I understand that Julius has a unique level up system where I believe he gets health as he beats bosses, and he has 4 or 5 very unique abilities to himself that you can cycle through, but it just didn't seem appealing to me, especially after playing the game through as Soma. Also, Aria of Sorrow was my nighttime chill game, so I wasn't looking for anything that was super difficult and frustrating just to chill with some TV on. There's definitely a time and place for those time of games, not usually for me, but I definitely didn't want Aria of Sorrow to be that game. A few times a week, I would take Soma Cruz for a whirl around Dracula's castle while I watched some Netflix or Hulu with my girlfriend. And it's a perfect game for that. I did wind up taking a little break for a week or two and played through Link's Awakening on Switch, which is exactly when I got stuck with the death boss. I decided to just take a step back for a little while and come back fresh. And yeah, that's when I looked up a guide so I can progress through the story and actually had a game that I left, came back to, and completed, which I don't always do. Whenever I drop a game, it seems to be forever, even though I have good intentions. But yeah, all I can say about this experience is, wow. I've been having an amazing gaming experience ever since quitting Genshin Impact back in September of 2021 after playing basically only that for 12 months. I started to yearn to play and complete shorter games that I've been meaning to play over the years. Since then, my 2022 has really honestly been filled with fantastic video games. Elden Ring, Tunic, Infernax, and Link's Awakening, now definitely adding Castlevania Aria of Sorrow to that list. These all probably make 2022 my best gaming year ever, and we're only 4 months in. Where do you think I should go next? There are more Castlevania games on this Advance Collection. I can move to Dawn of Sorrow, Aria's sequel on the DS, which I have. I'm open to other Metroidvania games as well. I've heard good things about the Guacamelee series, and I believe I have Axiom Verge. I'd like to stick to Switch games mainly, but 3DS and DS are okay. I want to play a handheld game while I hang out at night, basically. I played a few nights of Shovel Knight as a palate cleanser, but that's a little bit more difficult than I was looking for, so I don't know if I'm going to continue playing that. So make sure to do that whole like and subscribe thing. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and until next time, see ya.